looks like we're set to go. And board members, welcome to our July 21st special meeting. And we're going to go ahead and start this board meeting off with this opening statement, just so we can have our rules of order. We have selected to live stream, so welcome all those that are streaming. Social distancing, we'll continue to do that. And here are some of the rules we're going to use. We're using Zoom to conduct our meetings. We'll be streaming live to YouTube, which allows for members of the public to view and to listen to the meeting. We do have a call to the public normally in our agenda, and we have put out an opportunity for people to submit their comments that we'll read, and in certain cases, if they're part of the agenda, we will address them. But if you are interested in making a comment that you'd like to be read, you can send that to comments@payud.org no later than Monday by 5 p.m. the day before each regular meeting. And one thing, when folks are talking and you're not, it's best to mute. So please do that. Let's try to follow, because if not, we get those massive echoes. So again, welcome to this meeting, July 21st, a special one. Let's start with the roll call. And Sandra, will you start us off?
Hi, Sandra Kidman here.
Jamie Carey.
Ed Franklin.
Desiree Fowler, board clerk.
Okay, and Dee, go ahead and try that again. You're unmuted now. Go ahead. Dee McCary had checked in earlier. Dee, you wanna, can you hear us?
Yes, Jamie Carey.
Okay, you're gonna have to unmute. You just muted. There you go. Now, say your name again.
Jamie Carey.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got all our board members here, and we're joined by Lynn Hoffman, Executive Secretary to the board, also Superintendent Wallen, and Brian Osterink, running the director of the whole thing. Thank you so much, Brian, for all of you do. All right, let's go ahead and go through the agenda. We have an approval of the agenda. It's an action item. I need a motion and a second to move on.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second that motion.
Okay, Dee, unmute, Dee. Unmute. There you go. And
I second that motion.
perfect. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. First item on the agenda is our comments or questions from the public. And do you have a statement that you can read, or do we need to do that? Do you have it with you or not? I know these are unusual times. We may not have the formal statement, but the board does not choose to hear comments as part of procedure, but we have decided that we will. That's been the way the board has operated since I've been on it. So, and in this unique situation, we've made an opportunity for people to submit their comments or questions, and we did receive one from Ms. Deborah Roundtree, and her request was, first of all, I'd read it just like she would be stating it. I would like placed on the next agenda the discussion on how to keep our students safe from pornography and child sex trafficking. Great concerns exist, saying that many parents are unaware of the huge surge in 2020, with so many children now being directed to online activities, and children are being groomed for pornography and sex trafficking. We know our area has dealt with a rise in such activities. I'm having organizations send me information. I believe the school district has a responsibility to give parents education and training on these potential dangers. I would also like this question to be directed and discussed at the 2 meetings planned on the fall education plan. Again, with normal comments, we wouldn't address it unless it's part of the agenda. And as a result of comments on our reopening plan, this will fall right in line with that. So perhaps as we move on to item B, you could address that at the top. Mr. Wallen, you and maybe Brian Osterink address the question, and then move on with the reopening plan, if that's okay with you. So item B, district reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Larry Wallen and Jeannie Wood.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board.
And if we could start off with just addressing Mrs. Roundtree's concern, because it's right in keeping with kind of the reentry plan as well.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, as we move forward in building our reentry plan, one of the pieces in that entry plan is that every student will receive a Chromebook, K2 will receive an iPad. And in relation to your question, I'm going to ask Mr. Osternick to give us an explanation of how we protect the safety of students that have been assigned those Chromebooks. Brian?
Yes, what we are doing is issuing a Chromebook to all 3 through 12 graders. We are extending our CIPA compliant filtering onto those devices. They are even more locked down than a PC would be in the building, but they are also locked down to only be able to email within our domain. So other students and teachers in our domain. As far as the iPads go, at this point, we do not even put the Safari browser on there, and we do not allow apps to be loaded by the student individually. So there's really no access to an internet browser or the ability to add an individual email to those either. That's what we're doing at this point.
Let me just ask some, because I'm not a techie, and when you say it's locked down, that means the Chromebooks goes right through our server's filter, and
Correct.
and students don't have any access to any other things that are allowed by the server itself. Is that correct? They can't go outside of that. Is that correct? Ryan,
Yes.
do I understand that correctly?
Yes, the filter actually is allowing them to go to the internet, but if the only browser they can use is Google, and if they were to try to go to even look up a word that's inappropriate, it would immediately be blocked.
Okay, so we feel that it's really the controls on the school should assure parents and should address the concerns that Ms. Roundtree has raised in terms of the school equipment, correct?
Correct.
All right. The only other thing I'd say is that, that people really get familiar with computers, man, they can work their way around everything. And I do know that these filters do work. My biggest concern would be, much like parents, they have their own devices. What's in their hand is as powerful as the Chromebook that they're going to have when they take home to them. So during this whole time, parents are going to have to ensure that kids are working on schoolwork. And it's not necessarily that they're on other, they have to focus on their schoolwork as well. So thank you, Brian. Any board members, any comments on that or response to that question? If not, Larry and Jeannie, update on reopening.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board. What I've asked Ms. Wood to do is we did a variety of surveys and to talk about those briefly, the methodology, a summary of the results. So those are in your file attachments, and then the findings of the survey. So Ms. Wood.
Governing Board, President Candelaria, Superintendent Wallen, Governing Board members. I am here briefly to discuss the timeline and process used to examine user feedback, stakeholder feedback to help us in the development of our PUSD model to reentry of school. First on that timeline, on June 1st, the roadmap for reopening schools was sent out to all districts through Superintendent Hoffman and the Arizona Department of Education. Written within that roadmap was also considerations for families, students, teachers to look at. In alignment with that, Superintendent Wallen had set aside 3 days with approximately 45 stakeholders, including teachers, leaders, and other certified and classified staff to come together and be a part of one of 6 teams, one of which the teams identified was a communication team, team number 3. And their task was to look at how we currently are communicating information out to all stakeholders. So our first task was to look through the roadmap, look through the considerations, and start developing surveys in alignment with information that we needed to move forward. The first survey that was sent out was a parent survey that went out the first week in June. And a fair amount of time was really talked about the importance of not overwhelming parents when asking for questions, but ensuring that we had the right information within the survey to get the feedback that we needed. So we wanted a careful balance of all of those things. So there were certain questions that were asked, but in addition, there was an open response item given as well, so that we could be sure that we were collecting as much information as possible in a timely manner. Based on that first survey, the purpose really was to have them reflect upon their technology readiness to look at what they were expecting in the upcoming year. And this was sent out on SurveyMonkey and also communicated out with a parent messenger. In addition, at the time with food service delivery, a paper copy of how to access that was sent out as well. And the results back from that, we had 40% of our parents respond within that survey. And we recognized right away that we wanted additional feedback given. So we looked at alternate ways to increase those numbers. The second survey that was sent out was a teacher survey, also aligning much of the same questions regarding technology readiness, etc. Finally, the third survey that was sent out was a phone survey, also targeting parents and asking them about their enrollment choices and when they were coming back. That was narrowed down to a 3-question survey that was sent out, and our response rate was better at 38 to 55% on those responses given, with the idea of we need to continue with follow-up surveys along the way, follow-up questions. In addition to and I want to remind you that along the way, these are snapshots in time of the current reality. Although the roadmaps were released in June and a committee came together readily to start analyzing that information, other executive orders and followed up with frequently asked question documents that often explain the guidance are provided 2 to 3 weeks later. So this is a continual process of us needing to come back, look and review the results, reflect on our next steps, engage in stakeholder feedback and move forward. The phone survey, again, was the 3 questions asked. Afterwards, a classified survey, which closed today, was given. And the process for us looking at these survey results was to bring that back within a PLC meeting. And again, really reflect and look at those results to help us make decisions moving forward with our distance learning plan and our continuous learning plan. We've also recognized the need to continue and vary some of our communication methods. Yesterday evening was the first town hall where we were able to garner good information from that and talk through that. Updates through social media and PUSD Facebook page have been happening and will continue to happen. A frequently asked question document will be added to our district website to continually update stakeholders and what that looks like. Informational videos are being filmed as we speak and released to provide information, additional information to parents. Continued surveys again will go out based on decisions that are made so that we can continue that feedback. Stakeholder meetings with other health organizers have started and will continue so that we can build those partnerships within the community for that. And finally, the necessity to have one inbox made so that all questions can be looked at in one central location, because one impact of the communication plan is having a specific point of contact of which information is coming through. So those are some of the things that we have done in the way of communication to increase the capacity of, again, garnering that much needed stakeholder feedback as we move forward in the development of that.
Did the surveys give any insight into brick and mortar versus online learning?
The original survey that was sent out again in June, the original numbers said at that time, nearly 60% of our parents would opt for the in-person part of that. We have seen that number decline or increase drastically to have a 50-50 split of the preference. And in some schools, 40% of the 40%, 60 to 40, so a decline in that need. And again, one of the open response themes or threads that we've heard throughout, and again, it was expressed in the comment today, was safety protocols and measures throughout, whether that be in a virtual environment or an in-school environment. We have heard that, what does the safety of my child look like? So that was consistent across all surveys. But yes, we've seen a decrease in the number of parents that would be willing to have their students enter at this time. So again, each of these are a snapshot in time that we have seen that decline.
Is there questions for Jeannie or Ms. Wood?
Jeannie, I have a question for you. You had mentioned meeting with stakeholders. Can I ask who your stakeholders are?
Yes, the one meeting that I was speaking about in particular was a meeting of, and I believe that Board President Candelaria will be speaking about this later, that it was healthcare providers coming in and providing additional information of what that looks like. And again, we want to increase that information going out so that we have the appropriate supports in place for that.
Jeannie, I have a question.
Yes.
My question is, on these surveys, especially with the teachers, what were some of the outlining concerns that they had that they voted on?
Within the teacher survey, again, they talked about the idea of needing appropriate supports made available to not only their students, but themselves in learning in a different way. So they talked about the idea of ensuring that they were supported appropriately and that they were given access to the appropriate professional learning required of them as they moved through the possibility of these different types of teaching, whether they be within the brick and mortar setting or more of the remote learning setting.
What about the parents?
Same concern. There was some technology issues there was some access issues there, but primarily we heard again and again support for students in the areas of safety was a primary concern, and what some of these new protocols would look like. We're living in a different time right now.
Now, on your town hall meetings, what was the major outcome of that? All what you had expected? Questions that came from them?
I can offer my opinion, and I think Superintendent Wallen can speak to this more fully. But again, the purpose of the town hall is to continue to keep the dialogue open, to educate on what is new and developing. And even this morning, part of our meeting as we came together and did a reflection on that meeting was the idea of it's helpful to have that, because when we see common themes of people asking the same question, it helps us to clarify what we need to increase our efforts on in communicating out. So we will continue to refine processes moving forward based on that feedback. but I do feel like the intended purpose was met in communicating out our current reality and also seeking questions and feedback to help ease the tension of parents.
The reason why I asked was I was kind of wondering about, was our first going out for the very first time. Do you feel like it was very successful and you got the outcome that we need to begin?
I think that it was successful in the way of we know how to change, and there has already been some discussion about what the next meeting needs to look like, where we need to clarify points, where we need to add a question inbox to ensure that all responses go to one key location. So again, as we learn more, as we're given additional guidance and questions to look at, our process will continue to refine, and we will get better at communicating this information out to families. So I think it met its purpose, but again, Superintendent Wallen could give his perspective of that.
Thank you.
And I know that Mr. Wallen was involved in a town hall last night. And so I'm really anxious to hear about that. And that really goes to your question, Dee. But one of our challenges always and will continue to be is our communication to our chapters and all of our stakeholders on the reservation. And one of my first questions, I don't know if you have it fine enough in your surveys to be able to designate that this is of the 40%, how many from the reservation responded? Because that's going to be our biggest challenge, is making sure we can communicate properly to all of those folks out there, because we may be running buses. Information has to get to them. They have to know well ahead of time in terms of what the safety aspects are. And, if we come up with this really great game plan, but then, 50% of our people on the reservation don't know what's going on. And so how are we addressing that part of the communication?
Right, so 70% of the responses were from Page residents, meaning that only 30% of the responses came from our outlying areas and chapter houses. And again, the necessity for us to ensure that we're hearing all sides of that feedback. In addition, our Indian Education Director, Indian Education Coordinator, Eloise Goetzen, and our Family Support Service Director have started going out and having those conversations with families as well. We're listening intently to that information that they're bringing back as well. And again, we want to ensure that all voices are heard in this.
Hey, Jenny, I do have a question. I'm going to back up a little bit back to the teachers. In your opinion, how do the teachers feel? Do they feel like they're ready to come back into the classroom on August the 17th? Do they feel comfortable? Do they feel secure and everything in place? What's your feeling about that?
So again, I want to remind you that this is always a snapshot in time, and
Exactly.
and changing readily. The survey date of the teachers was in mid-June, June 17th through the 24th. At the time, they were asked what is their preference of instruction, and their preference at the time was the traditional in-person teaching model of that, at least was the preference of that. And at that time, they felt very comfortable in the idea of coming back, knowing that there would be protocols in place, safety protocols in place with masking and other things. But I think the fear of the unknown is always present. And again, if we were to ask that same series of questions today, the same way that the 3-question follow-up from the parent survey may yield different results, we may be looking at different numbers today as well, because they have had different experience now with the idea of what remote teaching and learning looks like.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I guess my part 2, that would be for Larry then. Should we go out and maybe do another 2 or 3 question survey from our teachers to see how they feel with starting back up on the 17th? Because I think as a board, it's something we probably would like to know also.
Yeah, we can put that together and send that out. We're getting down to the wire in terms of the days with teachers reporting July 30th, next week. And then going through professional development, and most importantly, going through preparation for virtual learning, because that's our first scenario in terms of opening school. That is, remember, and the board was very gracious and gave us 14 teachers that the board funded to develop virtual learning lessons so that we could have basically created 14 experts and what those virtual learning lessons will look like and how to put that together. The challenge, though, is it still doesn't solve the connectivity issues that we face. We currently are exploring purchasing approximately 300 hotspots. It's about $50,000. And we're not, that's just an arbitrary number we picked. We're still debating that through cell one. But remember, in order to have a hotspot, you still have to have cell tower access. So having a hotspot in an area that has no cell tower access doesn't do much good. So those hotspots would be a connecting issue, and then there would be an unlimited data plan with each hotspot, so that 2 or 3 Chromebooks could connect to that hotspot and have unlimited data service for that. And so that's one of the strategies we're still examining in relation to that. We have also put together a video that talks about what virtual learning would look like and put that out there. But yes, we can do another survey and bring that back.
Well, Larry, the more I think about it, you brought up a good point. I know time is short. So let me ask you this, and I guess this to be more to the point. Do you feel, are we at any risk of losing any of our teachers by coming back into the classroom with students on the 17th of this month, of August? Did you think we have any risk there?
Yes, I do. I think we have risk. Right now, the infection rate in Arizona is 25%. I'm not sure what the hospital here is saying, but in Arizona is 25%. And the trigger that is being looked at as being a potentially safe decision is at a 5% or less infection rate. And then the second trigger that goes with that is looking at a 10-day or 14-day no new cases kind of thing. So those two triggers are there. And I didn't apply that to Page because remember, we don't have as much volume as the rest of the state does. And so that needs to be looked at. And thank goodness we have another meeting with healthcare professionals that President Candelaria has put together tomorrow, in which we can look at more data and see where we are with that kind of thing. But yes, I believe we're at risk. We're at risk.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry.
Larry, I have a question for you. You mentioned 300 hotspots. How many devices are we able to put onto one or access with one hotspot?
I would suggest probably 2 to 3, depending on what kind of intensity they're looking at. If you're logging into you will be logging in. That's the only thing you can do with the Chromebook or iPad is log into your Google account, which then will take you to your Google Classroom, where you'll have those materials that you're going to be using. And that's the possibility. And I don't know that it could be more than that. So if a family has 5 students who are at different grade levels and has 5 Chromebooks, they're going to have to flip a coin as to who gets on at that point in time. But again, you click on, you sync, and then you can click off. So it's that kind of piece. And that's why as we're exploring the hotspots, we're asking for an unlimited data plan, which looks like it's going to be around $25 or $30 a month. It's not a cell phone plan where you have, text and all that kind of stuff. It's strictly going to be for data. The hotspots themselves cost about $75 each, and they would be assigned out based on where we determine the accessibility is there. We're also mapping all the accessibility in town, where all the places are that you can go to connect to the internet, as well as Brian and I talked yesterday about, we have Wi-Fi in here as an example, but we want to get Wi-Fi on the exterior of the building so you can come into the parking lot and connect up and get more strength to that Wi-Fi than we've had in the past. There's also the libraries, the municipal center downtown, different places, chapters. We're going to have to reach out to chapters because I did 4 chapter meetings, and one of the chapters had internet, and the rest were on and off mix. They either had cell phone teleconferences. No one was having a Zoom meeting like we did, so their bandwidth was limited. But there's nothing that precludes us from going out to that chapter and saying, if you will plug your Ethernet cable into this Wi-Fi access, we'll set this Wi-Fi access at your chapter or right outside, on the wall, so it can cover your parking lot so that people can come up and get access. And then we still have to get a plan of deployment for the 10 buses that we have that have hotspots on them. And those buses, you can get 20 to 30 connectors because of the power of that system. And so we're still evaluating how that will be deployed and what that will look like in relation to that. So those are some of the things getting ready. Our target is that August 10th remote learning date and being prepared for that and getting many students as we can online and loaded into that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay,
I
I wasn't
appreciate
sure
it.
if I got off track there.
No, sounds good. The reason why I asked this is because I was just coming into the building when a question had arise from a parent. So more importantly, there are 7 children in the home and different grade levels. And this individual had a question: how do we all have access to internet if there is, the hotspot available at 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. to start school and so forth.
Right.
But you did mention the gray spots. What the
Right.
alternative is to provide hard copies for families that do not have access to internet. Is that the plan?
That's correct. We can provide the paper packets, although it's very important to understand those paper packets will not be the same as they were presented from March to May. If you remember, in the governor's initial closure order from March to May, number one, he closed schools. What he should have said is, I'm closing buildings, I'm not stopping learning. And that then created its own dynamics in relation to how things happen. So packets were created by staff, teachers in the classroom, and then distributed. But as the time went on, it got less and less and less and less. So we know there was a tremendous learning loss from March to May and then across the summer. That's different. And so if you go back, and I'll send all the board members the link to the town hall last night, one of the things I emphasized in that town hall is this is accountable learning. You will be given assignments. You will be given feedback. Grades will be posted based on those assignments. So this is important that everyone understand that we're establishing a much higher level of expectation in relation to that. So if the ability is to do it through the Google Classroom electronically, that will be counted. If we have that gray spot, and I have a map in my office that I'm trying to lay over the map we have over there and identify where those spots are. And then we may be able to deploy buses, or we may be able to assign a vehicle with a hotspot in it to go to that location. It just depends how we eventually get that mapped out. But the goal is that on August the 10th, we do that remote learning and begin to have students log in.
Another question for you. I noticed going through all of the surveys, we don't have a survey for the preschool. Can I ask why we don't have a survey from preschool?
I don't have an answer for that. I'll have to get you one for that one. I didn't see that missing. And I'm sure it is. I don't question what you're telling me. I'm not sure why we didn't ask that question.
Thank you, Larry.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. President, you want me to continue then? Okay, so we have those pieces in place. I did the town hall last night. We'll be doing another town hall Monday night. Question about time. This one we did last night was 6 o'clock. I got a couple of people, 2 people actually said, that's dinner time. We're not watching you. And I said, okay. So, but remember, it's recorded, so you can go see it anytime you want to. That's why I can send you the link so you can go look at that. But in that town hall, I did about a 20-minute PowerPoint in which I went through and laid out where we are at this point. Just as Ms. Wood said, we've brought the teachers together. We created a continuous learning plan, a 94-page document that gives us guidance as we're moving through detail by detail. We developed then the scenarios for returning to school and what that looks like, and we're asking the board to give consideration to that as when that comes up. And I want to let's look at those scenarios briefly with you, because the question Mr. Franklin asks is really the driving force: safety, 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 and that's the challenge that we face. And where or when that's going to happen is another story. And I'm constantly monitoring those school districts around us and what they're doing, and how they're putting this together. So I'm going to see if I can share with you the scenarios. Are you seeing a green says option 1 at the top? Okay, good. So these are the scenarios for reopening school. Option 1 is our students, brick and mortar students, our paid students. And so we are proposing that we start school August the 10th and then possibly transition to on-site. However, that on-site is going to be driven by those triggers. We've got to have that infection rate down. We've got to have that safety issue up, because no matter how many times we sanitize, disinfect, fog, whatever strategy we're using, depending on that classroom, we got to be sure that it's going to be safe. And that's the question you ask, and that's where we're not sure that's going to be. So we are expecting, at this point anyway, that remote learning may continue on. And if you look in my recommendation at this point is that remote learning would continue quarterly. And I actually picked that up off Tuba City's plan, because I was looking at the whole semester. Is that we evaluate this in October, we evaluate it again in January, and we see where we are. We can always, with about a 2 weeks notice, start school, but getting to school and then having to be shut down by the health department for the next 14 days, that's going to create all kinds of issues. So the plan is to begin school, if the board approves it, on August 10th, and then transition to an on-site learning. We said August 17th, but if I had to say that now, I don't think so. I don't think the safety factors are there, but we'll see what that looks like. And then there could be phased offerings as to what that is. So the decision will be based on those CDC guidelines and the continued guidance on the safety of our students. Safety is the absolute critical piece. As I talk to parents from outside of the Page area, there is a very strong feeling that sending kids to school is going to be unsafe. They have been bombarded with curfews, with fines, with all kinds of things. And they're saying, we just want to be absolutely sure. We've lost relatives, we've lost brothers and sisters related to this, and we want to be absolutely sure that we can do that. And along with that, they're going to have to also help with this remote learning, with the connectivity. We can't recover from basically 100 years of neglect that has taken place in the internet infrastructure on the Navajo Nation. And that's, President Nez is hard on that right now. I'm in communication with one of his staff assistants about that. But you just don't go out and pop a cell tower here and here and here and make it work. It takes leases, it takes right away, it takes all those kinds of things. So right now, the hotspots and the buses are some of our possible choices, and that's going to be a real challenging scheduling piece to put in together. But the target is that on the 10th, we're going to open school. At some point, we're going to go to on-site learning. That's the brick and mortar. That's the Page High School, Middle School, Desert View, Lakeview, Manson Mesa. The other piece that we're putting together, and we've run into a glitch, I'll be quite frank with the board, that we were hoping to start August the 10th is the Sand and Sage Virtual Academy. And we were basing our decisions on the governor's executive orders, and it didn't quite come out that way. We've submitted our application for the Sage and Sand Virtual Academy. It'll be an online school. It will be a separate new school in Page Unified School District. 6 through 12 program will be, the courses will be based on Edgenuity, which is a curriculum company that we will be purchasing the courses from. Plus, we have a couple other ways to offer virtual courses that we're looking at as we go through that. But that will be a separate school. That'll be a separate application process. So based on some revised positions right now, we're suggesting to parents that you enroll in the virtual academy, the regular school, and we will then work with you, say that you're going to be pre-registered for Sage and Sand, and then as soon as we get the approval, we can move your classes over to the Sage and Sand environment. But it has to, it's a wall, because you have to withdraw and then re-enroll in another school. But the Sage and Sand Academy, I expect to become a premier learning organization in our school district. It's just going to take us some, this is brand new. So anytime, you go out and get a new car and you turn on the key, it's going to start up and everything. But then you got to sit there and you got to learn all the bells and whistles that go with that new car. And that's really what Dr. Hubble is doing with Sage and Sand, is putting all the bells and whistles that go into that in place. Luckily, the curriculum is in place. That's not a piece, but now we need to that setting. One of the critical pieces to Sage and Sand is that you must have your own internet connection. That is required. We do not serve meals with Sage and Sand because it's you're at home. Go to your fridge, pull out the snacks. It's a totally different environment. It'll be a 24/7 school. You can go online anytime you want to, except for K-5. We're really trying to put a teacher right in front of that to make it work. So that's the critical piece. So those are the two pieces. And what we're asking the board to do is give us an approval on when we're going to, or when we think we may move to. And I don't know that you can even make a definite decision right now. It's when the triggers are set that are tell us it's safe to return to on-site learning. So those are the discussion pieces with that, what that would look like. Let me stop there and ask a question. Then I have another piece that goes with this. And I'm gonna stop sharing to see if there's any questions. And all that material is in your board packet. Lots of material. I've given you everything that we put together. Not only that, but we've also put together specific protocols on face masking, on different pieces that we face every day. And we're and it's important to remember we are revising every day. We revised this morning. We revised yesterday. Every day we get new information. We get new information from Department of Education, from the governor's office, and so on and so forth. So every day we're looking at that. I just attended a few minutes ago a meeting with the registrars for attendance. And how do you take attendance in this new virtual world? Because the student because you're virtual, you're not going 1, 2, 3, 4, here's my checkbook and my grade book. That's not the way it's going to work. So you have to have your Google Classroom give you a printout and say who's in session. But if a student is participating in the class because he's doing his packet, we still count him in attendance too. So if we have to do packets with some kids, we have to track that attendance and put it together. I expressed, and I hope you would support that, to my registrars. You are the first line to deciding how financially sound we're going to be by the end of the year. I want you to be able to account for every day that a student is in attendance in the virtual academy, in the virtual environment, in the remote learning environment. And remember, because the way the governor's executive order reads, in that remote learning environment, and this is really not about the learning part, but about the financial part, it's going to be at 85% reimbursement until the end of the year, and then you work on closing that gap to the 100%. The governor has also put out a stabilization fund. So on the 40th day, we report up our attendance and we look at where we are, and if we're 2% if we're greater than 2% in lost ADM, we can apply for stabilization monies on the 40th day, but we still have to get there. And so there's those pieces. Plus, Ms. Wood is working on some other grants that are going to support that piece as well. Questions on the remote learning, virtual learning?
Now, when will parents be able to register their kids for Sage and Sand?
Right now, what we're saying, and this, I'll be meeting, sorry, I'm getting echo. I'll be meeting with, in the morning with the principals again. Because we're getting a lot of interest in that, we're coming up with a transition scenario. What I've been told, and I've been in contact with the assistant director of the State Board of Education, because we were told again that once you submit the application, it'll be provisionally approved and move on. Well, that's not the way it's worked out. Is that it'll be at the August 21st State Board meeting that the Sage and Sand application will be approved. Why is that important? Well, we need a thing called a CTDS number. In order to create the school within Power Schools, in order to collect attendance, we have to have that number. And state finance won't release the number until we have the state board's approval. So what we are working on in the morning, and I talked to a couple of parents today about that, is enroll your son or daughter in the regular school, in the virtual, because we're virtual, it's the same thing, and say that you want to pre-register. This is the scheme of the plan right now. We'll be putting more detail to it tomorrow. Say that you want to register for Sage and Sand. We will give you those classes that you would be taking at Sage and Sand, so that once we have the approval, it's just a matter of taking you out of one school, putting you in another school. The courses will still be there that you've been working on through Edgenuity. That's a tentative plan, August 21st. I can't guarantee that date, but that's what the state board assistant director is telling me to look for.
And that information, again, you'll be meeting tomorrow, and because I know a lot of parents have tons of questions with regard to what is going on. Do I have to sign? Because there's a lot of opportunities on other platforms, and I know a lot of parents are talking about, well, I really don't know what's going on with Page, but yeah, as soon as we can get that out, the better. So
yes, and what I would say to parents is, this is part of the whole disruption of education that we're experiencing.
Right.
And please give us a chance, because we believe that our Sage and Sand is going to be as equal to or better than what's out there. Those organizations like ASU Online or Primavera, they've been operating for years, since the AOL opportunity came up. We're just starting this year. And we're starting this year because we see a need in our community that says we want to do virtual learning in this type of environment. And that virtual learning is different than the remote learning that's in the brick and mortar. So give us a chance. Give us a chance. Be loyal.
I have a question for you. With the online brick and mortar plan, are families allowed to continue with the online option versus doing the in classroom instruction, even when we do decide to go back into the classroom?
I'm going to get in trouble right now and say yes. That is not the plans that you see in front of you, but I know I'm working with my elementary principals and my middle school principal, that if a student is not ready to return, let's say that August 17th date, if they're not ready to return because of the way things are, then they can continue to go virtual within that 6th grade math class or 3rd grade math class. And the elementary is Lakeview has set up a scenario like that where there'll be a remote learning coach that will be able to work with those kids. Again, this just came out today. That's this concept. And so we have to do more planning about it. The idea was, no, you've got to go brick and mortar. I don't believe that's, and so if you don't want to go brick and mortar, then you would enroll in Sage and Sand. So if you want to stay virtual, then you can enroll in virtual. And if we say, September 1, we're going to go on the ground, and you don't want to go on the ground, you can go over and apply to Sage and Sand and transfer over to that school and go to that school. like that, okay? I don't know what that was.
It was Yoda upside
Oh,
down.
sorry, it must mean I'm talking too much. So it's easy to go from the virtual learning to Sage and SAN once we get that approval. It's difficult to go from Sage and SAN back to virtual. So that option will always be there to go from the remote learning that we're going to start on August the 10th to Sage and SAN. It's just going back. You have to wait a semester, the way the rules are set up. And you asked another question. I apologize. So those are the pieces that we're looking at in relation to that. I have, is there any more questions on the scenarios and the models and stuff like that? I do have, I just want to, before you, I'm sorry, Mr. President, before you close that out, that in our leadership team meeting, we put together a statement for you to consider at the next board meeting, and it's based on current health and safety recommendations. As Mr. Franklin said, PUSD intends to remain in our remote learning scenario through January 4th, and that's also in my documents that I put in. But we want to evaluate that on a quarterly basis. We'll use metrics from the Coconino County Health Department, the established CDC guidelines, and executive orders, because there's supposed to be an executive order coming out Wednesday, Thursday, to continually assess the health and safety situation of reopening our school buildings. Everybody wants to get back to school, but most importantly, we want to get back to school safely. So any move from our remote learning scenario to our on-site would utilize, we would like to have a transition window. So when you decide that we're going to go on-site, give us 2 weeks to get prepped and ready to move forward with that. And I'll give that to you for the record. Any more questions on the models and those kind of things? Because I have one more piece that goes with it.
I just have a quick question. You've talked a lot about the K-12 preschool. What's going to take place with our preschoolers?
Are talking about iPads for preschool and the remote learning. It's just, 4 years old and an iPad. We've got to get that perfected much better than where we are now in relation to that. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. I'll have that for the next meeting. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. President?
Board members?
Okay, one of the other pieces, an additional piece that I put into that packet that I want you to think about and look at. See if I can, share it, is, hold on a minute, I'm lost in my, okay, in that packet is a piece called okay, give me a second, I'll find it. It has to do with athletics, and I asked Mr. Rivers to come on board. So at the next meeting, we're going to be asking you to give consideration to a recommendation based on where we are with athletics in relation to the whole piece. It is.
Is it the Arizona Central? That's what I see.
Oh, it was in the executive content. Let me go back. I know where it is now. Let me go back to that. It was down under, it's an action item for online charter schools. And what that is a document that I've asked Mr. Rivers to talk about. And it is based on, we would like the board to consider at their next meeting approval for non-PUSD online charter students that live within the school district regarding their eligibility to participate. And this is something that we'll have to do yearly, I guess, as long as we're in virtual. But I would ask Mr. Rivers to review that with you. It's called in your packet action item form template online charter schools. But this is just for information at this meeting, and then we'll have it for decision at the next meeting. So, Mr. President, with your permission, if you could recognize Mr. Rivers, our athletic director.
You mean you're referring for next month, right, Larry?
Yeah,
Yes.
we'd approve it at the next, or consider the
Put them
approval
on
at
for
the
next
next
month.
meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the information, the discussion about that item. So, Mr. President, if you would recognize Mr. Rivers, he.
Good to see you, Mr. Rivers. Nice beard.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, Board President Candelaria, board members, Superintendent Wallen, and Ms. Hoffman, appreciate the opportunity to present a recommendation to allow non-PUSD students to participate in activities and athletics at Page High School. It's been common practice for the school board to deny non-PUSD charter students participation in athletics and activities at Page High School. And with the change in education and our current state of virtual learning due to COVID-19 virus, it's been a more commonplace for our students with our school district to start to attend online schools. A review of our school board policy shows no direct policy or regulation directly addressing the eligibility to participate by non-PUSD online charter school students. A review of state statute and regulations also show no direct policy or regulation that directly addresses their eligibility. And a review of Arizona Interscholastic Associations, or the AIA 15.3.1.2, permits the local governing board to determine whether or not the PUSD online charter student can participate in athletics and activities. This is done on an annual basis during the summer before the start of school. With that policy, it also enables the governing board to allow, if it is permitted, that the school may charge online charter school students additional fees to participate in their interscholastic athletics and activities. All of the eligibility requirements will remain the same as if they are a student within PUSD in regards to grade checks every 3 weeks, attendance if the school tracks the attendance, and also reporting the grades and proof of progress towards graduation to the superintendent's office. Do you have any questions for me or anything that you'd like me to clarify?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, so here's my question. You mentioned fees.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you explain those fees and how much they would be?
So currently, we charge a $25 fee to participate in athletics and or activities. The fees that I've done a little bit of research, found some articles by the University of Michigan, a couple of articles from the Midwest. I haven't been able to find too many from out here in the West, but fees range anywhere from $25 up to $1,000, with the average being $126 for high school sports and $46 for activities such as marching band, color guard, and other things like that. In conversations with our administration here at the high school, we feel it'd be appropriate to charge at least a $50 fee, which would be double what our normal fee for our students here that do attend PUSD. But again, that is open for discussion.
Okay, because that's my main question, is the finances of it all, because would that be, what would we call that, like a non-student participation fee?
It would be
Or,
just a fee to participate in athletics or activities.
well, but would we separate between our students and students from other
Yes, ma'am.
schools?
Yes, ma'am. I've not
Okay,
given any
so,
thought to
okay,
what
for
it would
reference reasons, I'll just refer to it as a non-student fee, meaning they're not our student.
require. Yes, ma'am.
So did I understand you correctly that that your findings show that that's anywhere between $46 for activities up to you said up to $1,000 for sports?
Yes,
Is
yes,
that what you found?
Yes, ma'am.
And
It's between $25 and $1,000, averaging $126 for athletics and then
Okay.
only 46 for fine arts.
And that is per sport.
It didn't qualify whether or not it was per sport or if it was for the school year.
Okay. So do you know how much we charge right now for homeschoolers that choose to participate, for example, in a class at our school, like science or orchestra, or when they choose to participate, how much that fee typically is?
That's not something I can speak to because I'm not familiar.
Okay.
with the charges.
Okay, I need to just find out what that fee is, because I know we charge homeschoolers, because, you know, orchestras, for example, is not a class you can teach at home.
Mhm.
You need an orchestra. So we do charge for people who choose to do online, choose to homeschool or do online school currently if they want to participate, let's say in science orchestra. So would that fee be, remind me again what you said, what fee the high school is comfortable with right now
So we think.
to charge?
So currently the fee is for $25. That also includes homeschool. We felt that if we doubled the fee, if it was $50, we felt it would be appropriate. But then again, we are open to discussion.
Because I feel like we don't talk about this very often here in Page, because traditionally we've had very little competition from other schools because of our geographical location. But I'm just concerned about equity for our students that are in our schools, because basically our students come with a dollar sign over their head. And when somebody chooses to take their student somewhere else, those dollars go with that student. So now we still have to provide for our facilities. We pay our coaches out of maintenance operation. So I don't think it's unreasonable to expect non-students to pay a significant fee and not just a token amount. So, and I don't know where that is and, you know, what that's going to be. But for me, at right now, $50 seems a little low. But I would like it to have a better cost analysis than just saying, well, let's double it. Because didn't you say that right now our own students have to pay a $25 fee to play sports?
Yes, ma'am.
So I would think that a non-student fee should be significantly higher, unless somebody can show to me that playing sports only costs $50 per student.
And I'm willing to forward the articles that I found. I'm not aware of, I've not had a discussion because it's not come up before, but I'm willing to ask other athletic directors.
Yeah, I would really like to see a little bit more of a cost analysis on how much do we actually spend on sports. And it could be that different sports cost us, you know, different amounts of money. Maybe, you know, some sports are more equipment heavy than others, or I don't know, but I would like to see, I don't want to just random number. I would like to see a little more information on that, please.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I agree, Sandra. I think you got a good point. I don't know, maybe the state maybe have a little bit of insight on there to that also. Could give us some guidelines. I'm not sure. And I do know you're probably thinking the same way, Sandra, is that it should be a little bit more, but we want it to be reasonable though, because we want to have those kids to have an opportunity to play those sports out there. Go ahead,
And
Larry. I'm sorry.
No,
I agree with you, Ed. On the other hand, I don't feel like it's fair for our own kids, because if people choose to go somewhere else, that's fine. But then they can't expect us to substitute those, subsidize those kids and take that money from our kids that are here already. And I feel like that is an important factor, because otherwise we're just stealing from our students to provide opportunities for non-students. And at the end of the day, I want it to be fair, and I want it also to be a reasonable amount, but I don't want it to just be a random amount. I think it just needs to be better researched.
and please keep in mind, and Ernie, correct me, but if they enroll in Sage and Sand, our own school, they're charged the regular fee, the regular $25.
That is correct. If you're within the PUSD, so if you go to Manson Mesa or you go
Good
to
point.
Sand, it will remain $25.
I
That's
just
why-
have a
oh.
quick
That's why-
question. Go ahead, Sandra.
That's why I said non-students, refer to them as non-students,
Mhm.
because if they're enrolled in any of our schools, there are students.
Right.
POSD student, but anybody else would be a non-student. And I think that would help distinguish and make it clearer what why we're treating them or why it is the way it is.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Can I ask why this has never been approved in the past years?
So 4 years ago, I went to talk to Superintendent Varner. I just attended a conference that covered this specific topic, distinguishing the difference between homeschool and online students. He had told me at that time that it was common practice for the board to deny the participation of non-PUSD online students. If the COVID situation was not the way that it was this year, I probably would not be coming before you to ask for or give a recommendation to allow those students. A lot of the teachers that I've spoken, or parents that I've spoken to, have said that they are going to take their students and put them in an online academy, would like to return in January when things hopefully are back to somewhat of normalcy. And so that is the reasoning that I've come to you to ask for it. It's reviewed every summer. So next summer, if the situation is different, I would come back and possibly with a different recommendation, but time will tell with that.
Well, once again, Mr. Rivers, I think this is a good idea. From the area that I come from, the Tennessee area, this is a common practice also. I had never heard of this since I've been here, that we wouldn't consider it. So once again, I apologize for that, but yes, it's something we would have been more than happy to consider.
The district does have tuition rates for students who are not traditionally homeschooled, but who are being schooled through online, other online services outside of the district. And I know that Vindy can provide those figures. I can get those, which parents pay for their students to participate in certain programs within the district.
That would be very helpful information to help the board make that decision.
Ernie, I have a question for you. Part of the process with a student that is a non-page USD coming into the district as a new student does not play any sport, right? There's a waiting period. Am I correct?
So if you are a transfer student from another school, you participated in an athletic event or activity, depending on what activity that was, there's a waiting period. So if a student transfers in their sophomore year at the beginning and they played football and basketball the year prior, then they must sit 50% of those games. If they chose to go out for a different sport and they did not play that sport within the last year, then they're eligible immediately. If a student transfers a second time, they must sit out a full year. This would only apply to students that live within our school district. Their domicile resides within our school district. It does not apply to students that lie within a different school district. And I know that's not as a biggest concern here as it may be in an area where you have 3 schools and 10 square miles.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any other things I can clarify?
I'm sorry. Board members, any other questions? I apologize. Bob had to step out for a bit, so I just kind of forgot my place here while I was listening in. So, Superintendent, do you have any more to add to this item?
No, it'll be on your next agenda. We'll get you the additional information that you have asked for so that you can make a better decision. It'll be on the next Tuesday's agenda as an action item.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Moving along to item C, CAB repairs and continued operation. Larry?
Thank you, Madam President. Basically, as we've gone through the budget approval process, one of the conversations I kept hearing from the board was a good question: where does all of our money go? And while it is in my authority to approve something like this, I said the best way for you to experience that and feel how we're spending money or proportioning money is to approve those expenditures that are quite significant. And in this case, we have some CAB emergency repairs that need to be completed. And it is based on, I'm sorry, I lost my page. There it goes. I'm sorry. About $190,000. And if we don't complete these repairs, then we're going to have to shut down the CAB basically, because it's energy management and it's air conditioning and stuff like that. So we are asking the board to consider this, and we want to get you the big picture though in terms of this. So it is to replace the main electrical breaker panel and all electrical gear in the CAB. It's rusty and it's old. And then to install a new emergency energy management system, we have an allowance for about $70,000. So between those two, the replaced main electrical breaker panel and electrical gear, that's estimated to cost about $94,000. The install the new energy management system is estimated to cost about $100,000. So that brings the total to about $196,000. Also, one of the things that was brought to me when I came on board in July and we met with President Candelaria about was a capital list of all of our facilities. And we have a facility list that says we need about $18 million to bring our facilities up to standard. The need is there. Just the piece of that 18 million that would be sent to the repair of the CAB is about 600,000 in addition to this 196,000 to kind of give you the big picture. So we have some real large capital needs that we need to put into considering how to deal with that at some point. But what I wanted to do at this juncture is to say, members of the board, and this is an action item, to make emergency repairs to the CAB to the tune of about $196,000. Remember, our capital budget, our district capital budget's about $1 million. So we're going to spend not quite a fourth of that to do this, but we need to move and get that done if we want to keep the CAB operating. Questions I can answer.
Lynn, I'm sorry. This is an action item, so that means we do need a motion. Can I have you unmute yourself, Dee?
I pressed the wrong button, so
Okay.
One more time.
Dee says she's going to make the first motion. Her screen is out. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All right, now we can continue with our discussion.
So basically that's the issue before the board is I wanted you to see where the expenditures are going. So, because you're accountable for those and know that when I ask you or we're proposing expenditures, you know that this is where the money's coming from and that kind of thing. So we're requesting the board to give consideration to approving emergency repairs to the CAB in an amount of approximately $200,000.
Okay.
$196,000.
And you said our capital budget for the fiscal year is $1 million.
Yes.
Do we have any contingency set aside?
Yes, we do.
How much is
We have
that?
we have a 450,000 and 300,000. That's in a couple of different accounts,
Okay,
but this is coming directly out of the capital budget.
okay.
So needless to say, we're going to be very cautious in how we spend
that's-
that, because it can go just like you see, it can go real quickly.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Oops, there we are. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, 5, 4. Motion passed. Thank you, Mr. Wallen, or Superintendent Wallen. Moving along to item D, approval of SFB terms and condition for various PUSD projects. And this looks like it's also an action item. So we will need a motion for this.
I make a motion that we approve the recommended project. That's listed as the Page High School winterization, Page High School bleachers, and Desert View. Page High
I can't hear her.
Hold on. I'm going to pause. Hold on just a second. Mute everyone. Pause everyone. I'm going to put D back on the right screen. Hold on.
Okay, it's connecting.
There you are.
Is she there? Okay,
Yeah.
now try that.
D, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Can you make your motion again, please?
okay. I motion that we approve the renewed, let's see. Okay, make a motion to approve the SFB terms and conditions for various Page Unified School District projects.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Superintendent Wallen?
Madam President, Mr. President, we have brought these to your attention because, again, we want to show you where the flow of work is going. These projects were submitted to the SFB, and they have awarded us these repairs. So there's awards letter for PHS weatherization. There is a awards letter. The PHS weatherization is in the amount of $16,200. And so I want to move forward. We'll ask the board to move forward with that. And then the next one is the PHS bleachers. And the next one is Desert View HVAC, which is $47,736 to replace a 5-ton gas pack HVAC units. I'm sorry, to replace 5 5-ton gas pack HVAC units at Desert View. And these will be funded by the SFB, the Arizona School Facilities Board. We want to thank Mr. Cody Chichili and his staff for putting these applications together and getting this approved for us. And so we're requesting the board to accept this award and then authorize I believe the board president has to sign a terms and conditions. Yeah, terms and conditions for acceptance of each of the 3 projects.
Mr. Candelaria, I'm going to go ahead and return the board meeting back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Again, we do have a motion to say any other comments?
None.
We're good. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Again, thank you, Ms. Fowler. Item number E, I believe, is our next agenda item. Is that correct? All right, item number E, agreement between Public Consulting Group Incorporated, PCG Location Education Agency, Medical School-Based Claiming Program, Direct Service Claiming, and Medicaid Administrative Claim. This is an action item. I'll need a motion in a second.
I make a motion to approve the renewal of the Medicaid agreement for the school year 2020-21.
I'll fucking it.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. Any comments or questions? This is a renewal. Not hearing any. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Good. Next item on the agenda, approval of routine personal items. This is again an action
Personnel.
item, and I'll need a motion in a second.
I make a motion to approve routine personnel items as submitted.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and it was seconded by Dee McCary. Thank you very much. Mr. Superintendent Wallen.
Mr. President, members of the board, requesting the board, these are replacements that we need to continue our program. We're recommending Jeannie Picari, Lakeview Primary Special Education, Jackie Lou Klimke, Middle School English Language Arts, and Rachel Wilson, High School Social Studies. Remember, we recently moved a social studies teacher into an AP position, and then approving a transfer of Seraphina Adson to the middle school clerical registrar. Those are the personnel recommendations.
Board members, any questions? Okay, having none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Good, it passes. The last item on the agenda is item G. This is a discussion item or a report primarily. It's going to be a very short report. I talked to Mr. Joe Wright from Encompass about getting a team together to provide a couple things for the school. One is just a reality check with regard to all of the guidance that's being provided for the safety of our staff, our kids, and to hear their comments. And again, this was a brainstorming session that was carried out on I believe it was was it Monday or Tuesday of last week? And so 2 purposes actually, to hear from them and then to hopefully form a team of these medical folks. The ones that attended represented Encompass, Banner, Canyonlands, Lachey Medical, and I think those were the agencies that were there and were present. We also had from Banner, we had 2 representatives, and one was the infectious disease director, a really great resource. We had 2 from the Lachey Medical Center. And so again, once Superintendent Wallen provided an update on the plans going forward, then we got a lot of great feedback from them. At this point, again, meeting the intent of that purpose, we've called another meeting for tomorrow actually. And here's the goal, is to put together as much information as we can for the board to consider. We didn't have latitude at this point to take formal notes, so I haven't dispersed those as yet, just because these are members of corporate organizations, and they have to have approval from their organizations in order to represent that organization. Again, the second purpose was to put together an ongoing team that would provide PUSD with a really go-to group that has their pulse on everything that's going on medically. And so really feel extremely excited about everybody's not only agreement, but how quickly they responded. Further, I talked to, I believe it's the director of the CWC. Somebody help me with her name, Gwen Laszlo. She used to work for the school district, and now she, I think, heads up CWC. And I cannot tell you what the CWC means. Do you have any idea, Ed? All right, so I don't know the acronym, but she represents the organizations, and she's bringing an additional representative that does represent from Encompass, someone that has to do with the drug issues. She's a director of those kind of things. So the community's really stepping up in terms of wanting to help the school. They know, hey, we're all in this together. Some of them, a good portion of them, graduated from Page High School, and they're tied to this community in a great way. Their kids have been in the high school. I can say one thing that came out of it after everything was presented. Mr. Wallen, Superintendent Wallen, presented that, and there were three of the members, four of the members that had children in school. And two of them said, well, now that we've heard what the school is doing, we would feel comfortable putting our kids in school. And then two others said, no, we're not going to do that. I think it's kind of a wait and see. And I really appreciate what Superintendent Wallen is doing for us in terms of giving us, really focusing in on those critical points and guidelines for opening, the 5% and the 10 to 14 days. Because Page is unique. Everyone said, yeah, that the statistics at this point are showing that the curve is potentially going down, not only on the reservation, but also in the Page area. We have been fairly decent and low. Saying that, we are coming down from a mountaintop in Arizona, and up, especially on the reservation, they're coming down from a mountaintop. So still, the number of cases is still alarming when you start thinking about, hey, we're doing really good. We only had 3,000 cases today, 3,200. And then in Coconino County, however, we've seen a reduction of about 40% this past week from what we saw before. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as a result of the open testing that was done on the 17th. And I don't know when we'll see those results or if we will, but they had the testing done here, I think, drive-through at the Page High School.
CAB.
At the CAB. And so, again, the purpose is to provide information to the board, and the intent, again, these guys have got together literally on a minute's notice, and now they're making way to come because I said we have to make a decision on the 28th. And so as soon as we come out of the meeting tomorrow, hopefully what we have is someone that will represent their organization going forward. And we would have a school representative assigned as well to be the contact point for them. So in the event we run into anything that we need assistance with, the commitment would be that they would provide resource for us, whether it be in terms of the psychological aspect of things. We're talking not only about PTSD and with our kids and trauma and all of it. Every one of those areas are literally covered by this group, in addition to the medical part. And hopefully what we can do too is get a good handle on if we do come up with someone that does get sick on campus, a teacher or anything like that, can we have a quick response for our community? But like I said, we're getting some extremely good comments from a really wide variety of folks that represent this community. So I was really excited about it. And even more so, tomorrow, I'm excited about that meeting. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at with it. I did say I wasn't going to bring up specifics of that meeting, but if I get latitude, I'll send the notes that were taken. They weren't direct minutes, but they were notes that were taken from the first meeting, and then also we'll do that from the summary of the second. And we'll have that as part and parcel of the meeting on the 28th, so that we can, it'll just go into our toolbox. So did I miss anything, Larry?
The one piece that I'm really excited about, and thank you for putting this together and bringing these really highly technical people together, is we're also going to be working on some training that they would provide to staff about recognition,
Perfect.
about COVID-19. And so they're working together to put together training. And I said, we will, as our professional development program is going on, we will insert you wherever you say. We'll schedule at your convenience to get this information out, because it'll help people's anxiety level to have this information. I was very impressed by the information that was provided, and I think that training will be a big step. And thank you, Mr. Candelaria, for pulling this together.
But one thing I'll add, Pat, I believe Patricia Kent, I think from Lucie, was that her name? If I'm remembering that right. Patricia Kent also offered, hey, I know someone who speaks Navajo, and it happens to be a relative, because we were asking about doing videos in Navajo to get that, information out. And so I think what we've got is two potential interpreters.
Correct.
That can help us with the video. So I was really excited about that piece as well. So, any questions or any comments? All right, but again, I'm really excited. I'd like to thank Joe Wright for actually initially getting this whole group together on literally within about 2 hours after our initial conversation. He said, yeah, this is something we can all get behind, and we'll just see who's available. And everyone he mentioned showed up. And I'd like to say it wasn't because of the pizza, but it was because of Page Unified School District. And so anyway, really send my thanks out to that, and Gwen Laszlo ahead of that, because we'll be seeing her and another person she's recruited for the conversation tomorrow. Okay, that is the totality of our agenda tonight. Item number 3.
I'll make a motion that we're adjourning.
I second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. And for those online, thank you for being there. If you have comments, you have a vehicle to submit comments. I just want to remind you that site is comments@pageud.org, no later than the Monday before the 5:00 p.m. meeting. Again, the next meeting, we have committed to make a decision in terms of brick and mortar, virtual, August the 10th. I believe that's still the same, Larry, August the 10th, virtual, and then we'll make a decision on any other ways we've got to go. So once again, thank everybody for their input.